Welcome back. You are watching Gravitas. The recent bombings of an Istanbul stadium in Turkey and the subsequent crackdown on the Kurds has brought focus back on the uneasy relationship between Turkey and the US. US support for the Kurds in the war against the Islamic State has revived tensions with Turkey, but sees a hidden agenda that could see Washington support an autonomous or independent Kurdish state carved out of Turkey. Here is the story.
US President-elect Donald Trump faces a major diplomatic challenge when he takes office in January. Ties with longtime NATO ally Turkey are under severe strain, given Washington's support for the Kurds in the war against the Islamic State. Turkey's President Erdogan's crackdown on the Kurds following Monday's bombing of an Istanbul stadium has exacerbated tensions. Reports say nearly 300 people, mostly Kurds, have been arrested on suspicion of complicity. They include members of a pro-Kurdish party elected to the Turkish parliament. Washington has condemned the bombing, but President Erdogan is not impressed. He's demanded that the US extradite Fethullah Gulen, a cleric based in the US whom he accuses of involvement in a coup in July. The US says, "Give us proof." Erdogan is also upset over US special forces assisting Kurdish fighters in the advance on Raqqa, the capital of the Islamic State in Syria. He's convinced the US will back Kurdish demands for a separate state in southeastern Turkey. The strained relationship with Turkey undermines a crucial link in NATO's strategic shield against Russia. Erdogan's recent peacemaking with Russian President Vladimir Putin suggests that NATO's southern flank may not be NATO's for long. Bureau reports, WION.
Let me come back to my colleague Daniele Pagani on this. There's a huge challenge in place. Iraq has a section where the Kurds are. Historically, this is the place where Saddam Hussein attacked, had a chemical weapons attack, and about 130 Kurds died. Now that territory has always been asking for having an independent state. They got an autonomous region, but not really an independent state. It's about the area of Kirkuk, very oil rich. Now on the other end, on the Turkish side, there are a tremendous amount of Kurds who live as well. They've been asking for an independent state from Turkey, but obviously this is not going to happen. How is this going to unfold? Are we seeing this region taking a brand new shape? Are boundaries going to get redrawn, Daniele?
Well, whatever will happen, it will not be a positive development of the events. This is because the relation between the Turks and the Kurdish Turks, so the part of Kurdish population living within Turkish border, is at its minimum. So right now they are in full war asset, both the sides. What I think and what I perceive is that the PKK, the Kurdistan Worker Party, which is the major political actor within Turkey, I would say, is not fighting anymore for an independent Kurdistan. So they do not have this idea of a nation for the Kurds. They are only asking to have their full rights constitutionally respected, and they are asking the possibility to the Turkish government to respect their tradition and live as a minority within the Turkish border. So what I think is that right now all the Kurds, even the Kurds in Syria and the Kurds in Iran and the Kurds in Kurdistan, in the region of Kurdistan, which is now in Iraq, are not asking anymore to cut out part of these nations where they are in order to build a new nation only for the Kurds. They are just wanting to find a way to live within these countries, enjoying full rights, full constitutional rights. This is what they are trying to achieve.
Well, let me come back to you and ask you, what's your sense? You have spent time in Iraq as well, and you have, seen the region well enough to understand what are they really looking for.
Well, I think the strategy of the United States in the Middle East has been drafted long time ago with the strategy of the 21st century of the Pentagon, which already spoke of disintegration of this part of the world in a different state, because the United States does not feel comfortable with big state anywhere in the world. Therefore, the Middle East has been a subject of the United States to divide it. If do you remember 2003 when we were embedded with the American, the whole objective of Iraq war was based on two lies. One was the lies of the weapon of mass destruction and Saddam Hussein linked to Al-Qaeda. And then we realized that whenever the United States goes, Al-Qaeda is re-emerged or give birth to Al-Qaeda anywhere they have gone. They have gone to Afghanistan, they have gone to Iraq, and they have gone now to Syria, and they've gone to Libya, Yemen, everywhere there is Al-Qaeda. So therefore, it's a tool that has been used to disintegrate this part of the world. So Iraq literally was divided into three states. One is the northern part, which is the Kurdistan, and the middle, which is a majority Sunni, and the south, which is a Shia. And that's where the similar was going to be applied in Syria. Now, the Turkish part on this is very sensitive because Turkey constitute 30% of the populations, actually, they are Kurd. So therefore, the majority of loss, if the independent Kurdistan, will be mainly on Turkey. And Turkish was sensitive to PKK in Syria and their activities, so they didn't want it to see that there could be any self-rule for the Kurd. But they have been used by the American and the West to the large extent that they are telling them that we will give you independence. And that's the worries of Erdogan have started when he realized that has been taken for a ride by the American, who has been using his military bases to attack in Iraq and to attack inside Syria as well. So now he is realizing that it is no more under control because you have almost 23 million Kurds are in Turkey are against the policy of the Erdogan government, which is trying to suppress the Kurdish people. The Kurds of Syria constitute only 10%, and we know that.
So while I remember 2003 when the war was unfolding, you were there for the beginning of the war. We were in there as well in the region, and we went up to Kirkuk. One of the promises that the Americans made, obviously, was here is, as soon as the war ends, you will have your independence. Obviously, the Americans went back on their word, and the Kurds certainly were very, very disappointed. They had hoped that they will get their region, they'll get the money to spend, and they'll get to build their part of the world. So where do the relations between the Kurds and Turkey stand as of now? Here is a report on where things are right now in the region.
On December the 10th, twin bombs exploded outside the Galatasaray Stadium in Istanbul. At least 38 people died and more than 155 were injured. Shortly after, Turkey's Prime Minister Binali Yildirim said the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, was the prime suspect in the attack. But another organisation calling itself the Kurdistan Freedom Hawks has claimed responsibility. This is only the latest event in the war between Turkey and its politically active Kurdish citizens, a fight which is now nearly 40 years old and has claimed 40,000 lives. The Kurds are a distinct ethnic group living in Western Asia. They're scattered over Turkey, Iran, Iraq and Syria. There are an estimated 30 million of them, with the majority of around 14 million living in southeast Turkey. They've struggled for a separate homeland since the end of the 17th century. They've partially succeeded in Iraq, where they've had semi-autonomous status since 1991. The main Kurdish organisation which fought the war against Turkey has been the PKK. In 2013, it opened negotiations with Turkey, dropping demands for autonomy in favour of full constitutional rights. But the truce was brief, with the Kurds taking to the streets in 2014, accusing the Turkish government of supporting the Islamic State and not letting Kurdish fighters take part in the liberation of Kobani, a major Syrian city under the Islamic State control. 37 people were killed during these protests. Last year, Turkey began bombing the Syrian Kurds, claiming it was doing so to prevent an ethnic Kurdish state from forming. The Kurds fought back, saying the Turks had intervened to stop them fighting the Islamic State in northern Syria. Violence then spread in southern Turkey. The ceasefire was definitely over. Turkey appeared to have declared total war against the Kurds after twin bombings by the Kurdistan Freedom Hawks killed 67 people and injured 180 in Ankara in February, and again in March. Turkish fighters frequently bomb PKK-controlled territories in northern Iraq. Turkish artillery shells Kurdish targets. Thousands of Kurds have been arrested, including leaders of the HDP, a pro-Kurdish opposition party. The Kurds are proving no pushover, though. Fighting back, one could say, is the story of the Kurds. Bureau Report, WION.
So the big question is, where are these Kurdish rebels coming from? Where are they based? Daniele, these are primarily Turkish Kurdish rebels, but they seem to be operating out of Iraq. Explain to me, how are they connected with ISIS, the Iraqi government, and the Turkish government? Where do they stand?
Yes, so the PKK, let's start assessing a little bit the numbers. So the PKK has more or less 30,000 fighters ready to fight each and every struggle they consider worth fighting for. Their headquarters is on the mountains of Kandil, which is a mountain area in the northern part of Iraqi Kurdistan, close to Iran. They went there in 2012-2013 after the situation in Turkey plummeted very, very quickly. So after Turkey started to attack them very frequently, they decided to get into the Iraqi Kurdistan with the favor, of course, of the Kurdish government of Iraq, which anyway considers them, let's call them, brother in arms. Still they are Kurdish, and still the common cause is Kurdistan and the right for the Kurdish people. So yes, their headquarters is right now in Iraq, but they have fighters everywhere. For instance, they have participated, when it comes to the Islamic State, in many battles against the Islamic State. The major, one of the most known that we have all witnessed, is the Battle of Sinjar. Sinjar is the capital city of the Yazidi community, a minority in Iraq, which was heavily attacked by the Islamic State, and they fought and liberated the city of Sinjar, and they are right now helping also the Syrian Kurds in the northern part of Syria to fight against the Islamic State in Syria. So the Kurds right now are based in Iraq, but they are moving everywhere whenever it is required to fight the Islamic State.
While let me understand, what's going on here? Is this the fight between ethnicities? Is this the fight between sectarian groups? Because the rest of the world, who really is connected to the Middle East through oil in many ways, and for example, South Asia is connected to it even with people going out to work in these countries or exporting goods, providing help in building factories. What's really happening here? I think for a lot of the world which looks at this war says, I don't understand what's going on here.
It's a conflict of interest. It is the oil and gas, and it is the interest of those countries which will always be the main cause of any fighting in this part of the world. When Iraq was invaded, we know that the CIA have taken 10,000 Shia men and 10,000 Sunni men, and they trained them, gave them the money, and they were coming and bombing each other, and they turned it into ethnic cleansing and sectarian kind of a violence where Iraq had been suffering for the last 15 years now. And now, during these years, you know, the ethnic cleansing, everybody start having the Bremer commandment, the 100 commandments of Governor Bremer in Iraq, where he put all the constitution of Iraq based in a sectarian line, where the Kurd and the Turk and the Yazidi, Azadi, the Shia, the Sunni, name it, and the Shahab, anybody start voting on the sectarian line. So that kind of sectarian and ethnic lines, it has already been set in this part of the world. And therefore, there is a fight of an ethnic outlook of it. There is a fight of the sectarian. And there is also a kind of camouflage of joining hand with certain tribal groups in this part, like they are doing with the Kurd, hoping that they will give them an independent state. And the project of Kurdistan was already displayed at the northwest of Iran, the northern of Iraq, the southeast of Turkey, and northern part of Syria as the part of the Kurdistan project for the country. So to make it more into a sectarian, you will always give to the world a reason to say why we have to intervene when there is an interfighting. I mean, I was in Washington, D.C. in March, and when I was asking my American friends, he said, we don't have a foot on the ground. We're selling the arms. They are interfighting among each other. Why shall we stop it? So it's a project. It's a project that can profit the arm industry in the world, Rohit. You know it, Iran know it. Without wars, you cannot sell your arms. And without selling your arms, you cannot have any kind of excuse to go into this part of the world.
You know, I've questioned this many times myself, that these arms are manufactured. We know the factories where they get manufactured. Why can't there be an embargo on where these arms will flow from? How do these arms get there? Who funds this weaponry? And this is a question which has dogged the world. Journalists like us, like Weil, me, and many who land up in these places have always questioned that. Where did these weapons, these tanks, these anti-aircraft missiles come from? At this point of time, let me bring an interview to you with Semil Baik. Semil Baik is on Turkey's most wanted list. He is one of the founders of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, and is a key figure in its high councils. In this exclusive interview to WION's Daniele Pagani at a secret location in the Kandil Mountains on the Iran-Iraq border, he rejected the accusation that the PKK is a terrorist organization and said the PKK has been publicly recognized for its fight against the Islamic State. Let's take a listen in on this interview.
We are on the Kandil Mountains, the part of Iraqi Kurdistan which share its borders with Iran. This is the land of the Kurdish Workers' Party, the PKK, an organization judged by Turkey and by many Western states as terrorist. And we are meeting one of the founders of the party, one of the leaders of the party. Cemil Baik is one of Turkey's most wanted men and agrees to meet us in an anonymous location on the Kandil Mountains. NATO members consider the PKK as a terrorist organization, and we ask him what is their answer to this.
Those who have designated PKK as a terrorist organization know themselves that it is false. PKK is a movement which struggles for freedom, democracy, human rights, and the values of humanity. It was included in the list of terrorist groups on the basis of Turkey's demand. According to Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, every country which is under threat from any organization must be defended by other members, who must act according to its requests. NATO members share many economic, political, and military interests in the region, and they did not want to endanger this for not accepting Turkey's request. Turkey has been pursuing a policy of assimilation, a cultural and recently also physical genocide against the Kurds.
The PKK has taken part and won several major fights against the Islamic State, like the one in the Iraqi city of Sinjar, where the Yazidi minority was being ruthlessly killed by the Islamist terrorists.
A coalition force is fighting against the Islamic State, an organization which is considered terrorist. Many international actors recognized and appreciated the successful fight of PKK against IS, especially in Sinjar, where we saved hundreds of thousands of Yazidis from massacre. If the world now is fighting back IS, it is also because they have been encouraged by the fight of PKK. At a time when everybody ran away in front of the flag of the Islamic State, the PKK went to the forefront and fought.
In February and March 2016, two suicide bombings hit the city of Ankara, resulting in the death of 67 people and more than 180 injured. PKK has been initially blamed for this attack, but then another organization, the Kurdistan Freedom Hawks, claimed responsibility.
PKK has claimed responsibility for any action it has undertaken. The secret state agencies active in Turkey have committed many crimes and then blamed them upon the PKK. I call on the international community to set up an independent fact-finding commission to come and make an investigation about who has truly committed the crimes we have been accused of. During the past 2 years, PKK has committed only one single action in Istanbul, which has been claimed by the People's Defense Forces. As PKK, we have not done any military action in any big Turkish city.
PK hatta çıkırıya hamı gotiye mıkırıya.
After 2 years of negotiations, the PKK has decided to resume its military actions against Turkey. It is a parallel war being fought behind the scenes of the more popular anti-Islamic State offensive, a conflict likely to escalate given the exacerbation of the situation in majority Kurdish southeastern Turkey, where the government is constantly bombing and the PKK keeps attacking regular forces. Daniele Pagani from Iraq for WION.
The question will always stay. If there are groups which are armed, they are not part of a government, do you describe them as terrorist groups? Do you describe them as freedom fighters? That's an ongoing debate. Now let me get a perspective from you, Daniel. You were on the ground there. How would you look at an organization functioning in this area? What are they doing physically? Why weren't they attacking earlier if they are a military group, the 30,000 fighters, as you said? What's going on here?
Well, they have been attacking earlier. The struggle between the PKK and the Turkish establishment has been going on for 40 years. Then they stopped suddenly because they decided, thanks to the leader Öcalan, who's right now in jail in Turkey, they decided it was time to start a dialogue with Turkey and start trying to understand if it was possible for the Kurdish Turks to live within the borders of Turkey and enjoying constitutional rights. At the beginning,
do they not? Can't they afford them now? Do they not have the constitutional
No,
rights?
they don't. They don't. They live in denial of their culture. This is undeniably. For instance, they are not allowed to learn and teach their language in the schools in the places where they live, which for them is an important pillar of their culture.
Sure.
We have to admit that language is part of all of us. I am also an Italian, and my language is part of my culture. Had I been denied to learn and speak and teach this language, it would have been a problem also for me. So that's a major problem. So no, they are not enjoying constitutional rights. The problem is that at a certain point they started demonstrating against Turkey because Turkey was apparently, this is what they claim, was not allowing their fighters to join the Syrian Kurds to fight against the Islamic State. So a big turmoil started in the south and southeastern part of Turkey. Turkey tried to repress it and 37 people died. After that moment, obviously the dialogue stopped and the PKK started attacking again and Turkey started attacking again.
Let me ask this to Wael. What is the relationship of Turkey and IS? One would have thought Turkey, a democratic government, would have not been partnering with IS, but we've seen proof on the ground that Turkey's been buying oil from IS and has been funding IS activities, while the US says it stands against the IS. And then we've also heard about the funding by the Qataris and the Saudis to IS. It's a really complex one. Sometimes I get lost in it.
It is lost for everybody who deal with the Middle East or West Asia, Rohit. It's not, you're not new to it. The problem here lies that when Erdogan was told that we will give you Mosul and we will give you Aleppo, he knew that this project, which means there will be no PKK or a Kurdish self-rule inside Syria. So therefore, he supported IS, he funded from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and then allowed the oil to go to his son. We know tens of thousands, and there were 200,000 barrels per day, which used to go from Syria and Iraq, bumped into the Turkish territories and sold and to Israel and Jordan, back to UAE, come back, the siphoning the money into Turkey. I think Erdogan realized that this game plan has changed now, because he knew that there is a plan of setting the Kurd of Syria an independent kind of a self-rule in this part of the world, which will have a great impact or ramification on the heterogeneous society of Turkey, where the Kurd constitute 30% of the population. So he started pulling out now out of the IS hand that he is not supporting them, and he's trying to have some kind of a control, a face-saving formula inside Syrian territory, so he can say to the world that I am defending my country and the sovereignty of national interest of Turkey from the Kurd, which is the more dangerous for him. But I think this game plan has been exposed. Secondly, the Kurd of Iraq differ from the Kurd of Syria. In fact, there was always a Barzani sect and the PKK, always they were at conflict. And Barzani played the dirty game with Erdogan, that he was funding and siphoning all the oil as well to Erdogan, to safeguard, as per the American instruction, that he will not be, they will close his eyes about his activity and focus more in Syria and in the future in Iran of the Kurd. So I think he have done the damage to the Kurd cause in this part of the world.
Thank you, Wael. Let's go back to another big development that's taking place. Another element that gets added to this equation is the selection of the next Secretary of State of the United States of America. Rex Tillerson is not just a billionaire with interest in the oil sector, but he's also seen to be close to Putin administration. Tillerson is the head of the oil giant Exxon, and the Western media credits him with striking deals with Democrats, dictators, and monarchs. Tillerson has been the chief executive of the Exxon Mobil since 2006. Interesting point is, Exxon's interest in Russia have expanded under him. Tillerson is known to be close to President Putin. He's a severe critic of US sanctions against Russia. He's expected to carry forward Trump's call for rebuilding ties with Russia. Now, the challenge here is, how does this all unfold? The challenge here is, so far, the Russians and the Americans have fought in many, many levels in Syria, in Iraq, even in Turkey. How do they now take this forward? Will them coming together really end the crisis in the Middle East? I'm joined by Archit Chaudhry. He's our correspondent, and he was there for the US elections this time. Archit, give me a sense of what does Tillerson's selection mean for the US-Russia relations, especially in context of the Middle East?
Rohit, especially when we talk about Trump, his cabinet picks have been nothing but surprising. And this one certainly another one that continues in the White House. Both, Trump as well as Tillerson have vested interests in Russia, or at least they're not denouncing any of Putin's claims. And this has many lawmakers in the White House concerned. So we also have to put things into perspective. Tillerson is the nomination, but he's not yet approved by the Senate. He has a lot to prove and a lot to show that he has no vested interests. Certainly, Russia has helped him with his business, his Exxon interests for most of his career. He's been the CEO for the past decade. So what will happen? Will he, in fact, end up getting the official nomination from the floor? That's the question they'll have to wait and watch. Interestingly, both Trump and Tillerson are both businessmen. They have no foreign policy experience. We do have to point out that Tillerson, though, has worked with leaders in the Mideast, in Europe and Asia, so he does have those diplomatic fronts, but we don't have any kind of indication that they have any foreign policy experience. So that's what we're going to have to wait and watch to see what they will do, how they will deal with Russia, which has everybody on edge.
Daniele, that question to you. In the Russians and the Americans come together when it comes to oil, what does this change for the Middle East?
It's really, really early to say, but we sense that Trump is going to change a little bit the path on which the Obama administration was working on, and he is very open to strike a deal with Russia. What could happen, maybe, even this is my personal opinion, obviously I have no direct knowledge of the facts, is that the United States will keep their foothold in Iraq and will keep doing business both with the Iraqi government and the Kurdish government, where they are very much welcomed. Whereas the Russians will probably strike a deal with Syria and with the government of Bashar al-Assad.
While last 30 seconds for you, can you set this context? If these two come together, how will the relationship unfold, and will the world see a drop in the oil prices somehow?
Well, I think the whole fighting in the world is based on whether we are living in a unipolar world or a multipolar world, where we can see the BRICS countries emerging as the challenges to the United States supremacy in this world after the fall of USSR. I think it is a matter of petrodollars now, which is now coming to gas dollar. The Americans are very much keen and insisting on pricing the gas in dollars. and they wanted to remain the supremacy in the currency market, that they can rule the world. So anybody who may think that they can change to do a barter deal without the American US dollars, they cross the red line. So I think Russia understands the game plan, so does the Chinese, so does the United States, knows that the future is lying with the gas in the world, because the era of oil have changed, because now the pricing are falling down, shale oil in the United States coming up. So there is a question of the gas, and the gas will be the dominant factor in the international affairs for the decades to come.
The challenge that we're going to see on the ground is how this all unfolds. At the end of the day, oil will still be around for about 30 more years, but gas certainly, where Qatar is very gas rich, and then obviously the Mediterranean, which is very gas rich, is going to continue taking over. But energy determines a lot of the wars of the world, and I think that's going to play out back in the Middle East, and that's what's going to change in the next few years. Well, that's all for now. For more news and updates, check out our digital, mobile, and social media platforms. Thanks for watching, and this is Gravitas. Good night and good luck.